I'd be like, all right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me to my workshop. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tejas. I'm the founder of Hack United, and in my opinion, this is one of the most influential slash important workshops you're actually attending during this hackathon because it's addressing an issue that is not talked about enough in the hackathon slash tech space, and that is soft skills. And today we're discussing how to form a good pitch. So without further ado, let me share my screen and we can get started. If you guys have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. You can just unmute or you can type in the chat, whatever works best for you. But I'm now going to share my screen. Alright, we should be good. You guys should be able to see my screen now. Alright, so this is how to pitch and grow a project by me. Just kidding, it's just how to pitch. So the original idea was I was going to talk about marketing as well, but we don't have too much time, so we're saving that for another day. But we will discuss the actual aspects to creating a good pitch in this workshop. So this is a new title, how to make a super fire pitch, and without further ado, let's get started. Now some quick information about me. My name's Tejas, I'm 16, I live in New Jersey, and I'm a junior in high school. I've been coding since middle school, and some of my other hobbies include video editing, lifting weights, and I love music. And of course, I'm an organic marketing enthusiast. You will never see me paying for ads because I believe that you can scale anything you want just with the power of social media and other organic funnels and other organic ways to grow. If you guys want to contact me, I feel like the most efficient way is probably the Discord server. My name is TCYT7 in there, and yeah, you can just contact me whenever. Now, why should you guys listen to me and my advice? Well, let's talk about my credentials. So, I've been in this space since quarantine, since I was about like 13 to 14 years old. I've been heavily involved with other types of growth methods such as social media, and I've organically generated millions of views. Now, I've worked with content creators, other businesses and apps, and even esports teams, and I've helped them generate millions of views online and establish a digital social presence. Furthermore, I'm the founder of a stealth startup which I founded this summer, and I've pitched and secured funding and grants from venture capital firms and angel investors. Furthermore, I created fearmedia.com, a post-production content agency, at 14 years old, and since then I've scaled it to over 5 figures in revenue in just 1 year of operating. We had over 50 paying clients, with all of them satisfied, except for like a few. Furthermore, something that kind of sets us apart is that we were able to stay afloat and we were able to actually sign clients despite being in a super saturated field. When we started off in quarantine, especially with the boom of like people on the internet and people trying to make a living through content creation, we kind of got in at the perfect time, but we were able to stay prevalent and we were able to stay relevant for over the 1 year that we operated, and we didn't have to cut corners at all. Furthermore, as most of you know, I'm the founder of hackunited.org, and so far in just over a year actually of operating, we've impacted over 3,000 students in over 60 countries, and that's really amazing. Now, might be my most official credential yet. I spent like 3 months researching soft skills for my AP seminar class last year. If you don't agree with me, you're not disagreeing with me, you're disagreeing with all these authors right here, because this is my whole works cited page. And yeah, I had a whole research paper which was just 8 pages of pure high quality writing. Now let's move on to the table of contents, where I'll talk about the structure of this. So obviously we have the pitch, and yeah, that's it, because we're scrapping marketing. Now let's start off with a very important question. What is a pitch? Now, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, a pitch is a speech or an act that attempts to persuade something to buy or do something. Now, that definition is pretty simple enough, but I think it's a lot more applicable to literally everything in life. I like to think of everything as pitching. Like whether you're just meeting up with a friend, you're kind of pitching them because you want them to have a good impression of you. So pitching is something that everyone does in their daily life, even if they're not aware of it. Now, why is pitching essential? As I just said, soft skills and pitching are super important because you literally do it every single day. It's super important to network. In order to make good connections, you have to have soft skills. Furthermore, when you're applying for jobs, especially in interviews, you don't necessarily have to be the most qualified candidate. You just got to get your recruiter to love you more than the other ones. And the best way to do that is through forming a connection with them and pitching yourself to your employer. And that requires, once again, soft skills and a good idea of pitching. Furthermore, it'll help you with relationships. Now, this could be an actual relationship, friendships, etc., etc. For those in high school, having a good relationship with your teacher, super important for rec letters. And yeah, just forming overall good basis with everyone in your life. And probably the most important part of pitching is it lets you express your passions with confidence. And that's something that is super important just in your day-to-day life. I think we all know that one confident person that we aspire to be like. That could be you. Now, before we talk about how to make a banger pitch, there's something we have to address first, and that is the types of pitches, because context is literally everything. Now, you should be aware and be prepared about what type of pitch you're giving. Now, there's so many different use cases, I guess. As I said, you pitch every single day, and you got to know what type of pitch you're giving. So, for example, there's a classic elevator pitch. You're giving like a general idea of your project / idea in a shorter time period. And that's really useful for, like, for example, if you're like just talking to someone on the run really quick. Furthermore, there's other types of pitches. A pitch where you really want to share your aspirations and end vision of your product. And that's something that could be used more in like kind of like a sitting down setting. And furthermore, obviously the one-liner, this is when you're in a really brief interaction, and that's probably applicable a lot of times as well. Now let's get into crafting a pitch. Alright. Let's talk about the overall notes about crafting a good pitch before we get into the nitty-gritty. So starting off, a pitch should kind of be business oriented, and it has to be purposeful. It has to have a purpose. You can't pitch something that's meaningless because it would have no meaning. And furthermore, you have to have a strong message in the pitch. It cannot just be yap. If you're just yapping, it's not a good pitch. Now, a pitch should be carefully planned and well practiced. And now we're kind of getting into the type of business pitch mindset. I know I said that you pitch every day, but right now we're getting into like a kind of like pitch that you want to give to someone who's interested in your idea. So as I just said, a pitch has to be carefully planned and well practiced. That's the only way you can execute well. Perfect practice is the only way you can prepare yourself properly when you're trying to execute on something as important as giving a pitch. I'll mention now that memorizing your pitch is a red flag. You want to have a good idea and you want to be super comfortable with what you're talking about. Memorizing is just a surefire way to not know specifically what you're talking about, and rather just memorizing the script is going to make you A, seem like you're memorizing. People can tell when you're just thinking of a script, and B, it'll really set you up for failure when people ask questions, or if like you get shaken up and accidentally skip a line. What are you going to do then? What's your recovery? It just overcomplicates the whole process. So I'd really recommend just getting super familiar with your idea, so much to the point that you don't have to memorize. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I did not prepare enough for this, but I am not memorizing, so props to me. So the main purpose of a pitch is it gives you an opportunity to set yourself aside from others. Chances are, if you run a business or a startup and you're pitching to someone, they hear a lot of pitches. And the cool thing about a pitch is that your own voice is kind of symbolized in it. So everyone has a different voice, and your pitch is what gives you a different voice from others. And as long as your pitch is good, that's something that will really help you in the future, and it'll give the person you're pitching to a better idea of who you are. and that's how good connections are formed, because they'll know like the type of person you are, and that comes and stems from your pitch. Now let's talk about the structure of a pitch. Now, the structure is quite similar to like the types of things you've seen. Since I'm still a student, like English class kind of set us up right for this. You might be thinking, oh, writing all the essays are useless, but it really just trained your mind to follow consistent structure. You know, you got your thesis in the front, or I should say your hook in the front, then your thesis, and then the rest of your essay stems from your thesis. That's kind of like vaguely the similar idea when making a pitch, because you want to follow consistent structure. Going like from here to here, back to here is just not a good idea at all, because it'll confuse the reader, and I'll talk more about that in the future. But for now, let's talk about the hook. Now your hook has got to be fire. It's the first moments of your pitch, and it's how you get the attention and interest of the person you're pitching to. Now, in my opinion, this is the most important part of your pitch, because it makes or breaks it. If you start off boring, they already have a boring impression of you. If you start off strong, they're engaged and they want to learn more. And a really important thing with your pitch, and this kind of applies to the whole speech or the whole pitch, not just the hook, is that you have to be confident. If you're not confident in what you're speaking, it makes you seem less reputable, and that's just not a good way to start your pitch. So even if you're not confident, because I know a lot of times when I'm pitching to people, I'm super scared, but I just have to act confident, and it low-key works out for the best, at least in my experience, and probably in yours too. Because if you're acting confident, the other person has no way of telling that it's an act, unless you're really bad at acting. Yeah, so the hook's whole purpose is you want to make them want to know more, and if your hook accomplishes that, you're set. And remember, you only have one chance to make a first impression, and that first impression is your hook. So your hook has got to be fire. Now let's talk about kind of like the middle section of your pitch, and I like to refer to this as the subject part. Your subject has got to be fire, and this is a general theme. Your whole pitch has got to be fire. Now the subject explains and proves your point. A key tip when presenting your subject is to make sure that your energy is high and your tone is confident. And it depends, for example, what you're talking about. So you don't want to have high energy if, let's say, your project is like curing suicide rates, because that's kind of a more sensitive topic, but you still have to act confident and you have to act well versed in your topic. Now, the whole point of the subject is to make them desire you and your idea. When you're pitching, you're not only pitching your idea, you're pitching yourself. And that's why every major VC firm, every major investor, in addition to wanting to know about your idea, they also want to know about you. And that's like the whole point of the interview. It lets the VC/investor get a better image of you as a person. And that's something that they invest in. Like a recent example is Ilya Skutsever, he was the chief scientist at OpenAI, and he was involved in the whole overthrowing of Sam Altman, which didn't really work out for him. But anyway, he just managed to raise $1 billion for his startup that was founded 3 months ago. And that's crazy because he hasn't written a single line of code yet. He doesn't even have MVP. His product is non-existent, and he literally already raised $1 billion from founders or from investors. And you know how he did that? It's because the venture capital firms are investing in him in addition to his idea, because he has a track record of succeeding. And the investors know that not only because of his previous experience, but also because of his demeanor and how he presents himself. The investors were happy to give him their money. And yeah, in your subject, you have to include relevant info/details without being boring. Now, a lot of people kind of fail to grasp that last part. It's really hard to present details and numbers without being boring, if you think about it from the VC/investors perspective, like they're used to hearing numbers. They hear so much numbers, and chances are, unless you're like a unicorn, your numbers aren't going to be insanely impressive. So that's not enough to grasp their attention from the start. So the way to fix that, or the way to combat that, I guess, is to be an engaging and interesting person, especially portray that when you're pitching. So your numbers can be average, but the investors will still choose you over someone else with similar numbers just because you're presenting it better. Now the third part of your, and I know I'm being like super vague here, and that's because like a pitch kind of has to, like, as I said, resemble your own voice. So I'm grouping the whole last part of your pitch as the call to action. And once again, your call to action has got to be fire. Now the call to action basically explains and proves your point. And when you're ending your speech, you want the investor to like be on the same page as you. You're the founder, so you're super passionate about your idea, right? And you're trying to kind of channel that energy to the investor. And once again, energy and tone is everything. This kind of applies to your whole pitch, not just the end part, but it's super important here because, as we said, the hook gives you the first impression, but the closure / call to action is the last thing the investor is hearing. So you got to make sure you go out with a bang. Once again, you have to make them desire /you / your idea. And the main reason for this is because if an investor desires your idea, chances are they're throwing their money at it. And you want to share your end vision, especially with this. I've seen like people do it in different ways. Some people like to start off with the end vision and then talk about how they're going to get there. I personally like to end my pitches with my end vision, and that's basically you being super optimistic, but you have to be realistic as well. Like obviously, if it's your first business, you can't say, oh, I want $1 trillion company valuation by the end of the year, right? Because then the investors are going to be like, all right, this kid does not know what he's talking about. You have to be realistic, but you have to be optimistic. And you can get away with exaggerating data if you're confident about it. As I said, confidence is everything. If you truly believe in it, or at least you act like you truly believe in it, it'll give off a really good impression to the investor. Now let's move on to the tips. Now these are kind of like grains of knowledge that will overall help you in your pitch. So the first tip I have for you is to understand your target audience. This is really essential for literally everything you do in life. As I said, you pitch every single day and you got to know who you're pitching to. So ask yourself the questions, who are they and what are their goals? I'll give you a quick example. Let's say you're pitching to an angel, right? And for those who don't know, an angel investor is an individual who invests in companies rather than like a whole firm. So yeah, you want to really research into them. Research, as I said, being prepared with perfect practice is the only way to succeed and execute perfectly. And in order to do that, you have to conduct research. So I would recommend looking into their LinkedIn, like seeing their interests, seeing what kind of mutual interests you have, and basically honing in and capitalizing on that. Emphasize those types of points when you're presenting to them. Furthermore, what are the motivations of the person? Now, for example, VCs are really looking for huge returns. On the other hand, angel investors are happy with a 2x return, right? VCs are looking to like multiply by like exponentially because they have a whole team. But VCs are angels are individuals, so they're happy with any positive return. So with this in mind, their motivations are slightly different from a VC. So also capitalize on that. Just be sure to act really confident. And to be honest, acting isn't really an ideal situation. Obviously, you should be confident because if you're not 100% confident, if you're not ride or die with your idea, then it might be time to like look into it and say, is this idea actually going to work out? Because most founders are ride or die with their product, and if that's not you, you might want to reconsider or at least become ride or die. And yeah, after asking yourselves those two questions, hone in on your pitch and you should be better off. Now the second tip I have for you is understand your own idea thoroughly, right? I'm like a victim of not doing this. A lot of times, for example, if I'm not 100% versed in my idea, I'll honestly like get sidetracked and I'll just, I guess, kind of make up stuff on the spot. So an example of this is someone was asking me about my project. They asked a question like talking about this type of feature that I've never implemented, right? and it kind of like stemmed away from my original project idea, and I just said, oh yeah, I'm planning to implement that. And sure, that got them interested, but it just wasn't true at all. And because I said I was planning to implement it, they assumed I was like looking into it, I was working on it, I had research on it, and they asked questions that I could not answer. And that all stemmed because I was not familiar with my idea enough, and I wasn't confident enough to say, no, that's not what I have right now. Or if I want to kind of like counter that without eliminating the idea completely, I should have said something like, no, I haven't looked at that yet, but it's an idea I will take into consideration. And that's just kind of like a general tip. Don't lie. Sure, you can exaggerate, but lying is a surefire way to just overall leave a bad impression, because people can tell when you're lying. Now back to tip number 2. I got a little sidetracked there, but basically ask yourself these questions about your idea. Now, what does your what I'll refer to it as project, not idea. What does your project do? Whom does your project serve? How do you deliver with your project? How do your clients benefit from your project? And probably one of the most important questions is what is your unique selling point? Because nowadays, a lot of projects are just not good ideas, and in order to be successful, your idea has to be good. Like a good pitch is not saving a bad idea. And yeah, and as I just said, if you're struggling with good answers for that last question, chances are your idea might be a little bad and you might have to reconsider. But I'm not here to hate on your ideas. Or you can just implement that, right? Instead of scrapping the whole idea, just add on to it. Like, make sure that you can answer these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions, and that'll really help you not only become more familiar with your product, but it'll also help your product become better. Now, my third tip is to utilize visual / multimedia. Now, in this presentation, I haven't done that as much because I'm mainly just talking to you, and I'm not gonna lie, it probably would have been a little more engaging with some better images / data / graphs, but it's fine. So when you're utilizing visuals, a major thing you want to keep in mind is use high quality images that are relevant. Having images that are not relevant serve no purpose to your product or to your pitch, and it's a huge red flag to investors. And I'm really going to emphasize this because I've seen a lot of pitches that like they think the images are relevant, but they're actually not. An example of this is putting like a clip art of your idea or whatever you're pitching, like that slide on it. So for example, let's say I create a hot chocolate maker. Yeah, just a hot chocolate maker, right? Yeah, I create a hot chocolate maker, right? That's what we're going with. On my pitch deck, let's say the slide about talking about how it works, instead of putting like a diagram about the actual mechanics of my machine, I just put a clip art of like an animated character drinking hot chocolate. It's not relevant at all. Even though my product is a hot chocolate maker and that's a person drinking hot chocolate, it serves zero purpose to my overall presentation. Another thing I would like to emphasize is data is very good. As I said, numbers are worth a lot, especially to a VC. And if your numbers are impressive, that's great. Definitely include them in like not only just numbers, but also include them in like graphs and things like that. But even if your numbers are not as impressive, there are a lot of ways to exaggerate your data just by using a graph. For example, let's say your numbers aren't so well. Like let's say okay, I'm in the hot chocolate industry, right? Let's say that I've only sold $1 million in sales, and that was not my goal. My goal is 5 million in sales, right? But put that on a graph, and let's say that hot chocolate sales overall in the last year had a downward trajectory. Put my $1 million in sales compared to the overall declining rate of hot chocolate sales. That actually makes it look a lot more impressive because it shows you're still getting sales despite a declining industry. Now I'll talk about some tips about an actual pitch deck, and let's start off with an IRL, so in real life pitch deck. If you're presenting in real life, follow the 5x5 rule. Now the reason for this, and let me start off by telling you what the 5x5 rule is. It means no more than 5 bullets, and each bullet cannot be more than 5 words. A lot of times, if you have too many words on your slide, the audience is not going to be engaged, right? Nobody's trying to read an essay on your slide. That's what your voice is for. And and it's a lot easier to have the audience engaged if you're talking to them rather than having them read. And this is also true for even like a presentation like this. However, the main difference is because I'm talking side by side with you, like my slideshow is as big as my face right now, you guys can read it. But if I was like, let's say on a stage with my slideshow on the backdrop, it's kind of asking the audience to divert their attention between you and your slideshow if you're in real life. And that's why you want to let the audience really read your slides quick. And to be frank, the slideshow is more of a tool for you rather than the audience, because the audience should be able to get everything they need from your voice, with the exception of like a graph or something like that. And yeah, a slideshow must also be very, very clean. Templates, I'm not a fan of, like all those like ones with a ton of graphics, a ton of like colors. I just don't find them appealing because it kind of complicates it and once again diverts the reader's attention. But there are exceptions for this. You got to really research into the type of person you're pitching to. So if they're like a old school, like they just want the data, and I'll put this into perspective from an example that I heard while attending a different type of workshop is, and this was a resume workshop, you kind of really gotta change, and I'll talk in terms of resume for now, really gotta like categorize your resume based on who you're applying for. So if you're applying for something like a graphics design internship, yeah, it'll be really great if your resume is colorful and aesthetic and things like that. But if, for example, you're applying to a software engineering internship, having a super colorful resume is not going to help you. All right, and yeah, one more note: copy other people. Like, this is like the best advice I've ever gotten, to be honest. It's not copying unless you like take it word for word, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying copy the inspiration. Like, take inspiration. That's a good way to put it. You want to take inspiration from other people who are more successful than you, and you want to kind of like add your own rapping, add your own voice to what they did, and then use that like styling slash other success that they had to make your own voice. And with that logic, your own voice will be successful because it's inspired by someone who had success. All right, now let's go on to the approach. Now, I stole this slide. I'll just say it right now. This is from the Technical University of Illinois. So shout out Professor Runge, who published this in my birthday month. I was born in April in 2008, and this is when it's published. So I guess I was born for this. So yeah, let's talk about the approach. We already covered the hook, but yeah, you just want to be interesting, something that interests the reader. I don't even know what that word means, but be to the point. And yeah, focus on a central message. You don't want to like go here to here to here, back to here. Keep the same idea. And also, you never want to contradict yourselves. Like, I've made that mistake many times. I've started talking, and then like 5 minutes in, I say something that kind of like disagrees with my previous points. And that's a major red flag that investors will see. Yeah, make the pitch simple. Like, you don't want to really, I guess, yap to investors. That's a surefire way to like leave a bad impression. Make it simple and easy to follow. And if your pitch is easy to follow, as well as being like good in content and good in details and good in being convincing, then you're set, because nobody wants to read more than they have to for something like a pitch. Because once again, from the investor's standpoint, they're listening to so many of these, you're gonna get bored real quick. You have to use your pitch to differentiate you from the other people. And yeah, for investors, it must be greed inducing. Yeah, so investors, as you know, the whole point of investing is to get a return on your investment. And your pitch is kind of trying to convince the investor that you are going to be able to deliver a return on investment. Now, my third tip is to be organized and have a good structure. Now, as I've said multiple times, you don't want to go here to here, back to here. You want to be straightforward. You want to deliver it like a wall. You want to like deliver it like a line, you know? You don't want to like be like a sine graph. You want to be like a constant slope, the constant velocity. Yeah, avoid yapping. That's a big red flag. And avoid being confusing. Like, don't use fancy words. Just be straightforward, be direct, be confident. Alright, the fourth tip is to address potential objections. Now, this is really optional. Once again, it depends on the setting, and this kind of is like a rebuttal type thing. I've seen it work, I've seen it not work at all. Some people bring up like a really good counter argument and then they respond to it terribly. So if you don't have a good response, then A, go back, revisit your idea. How can I change my product to have a good response? And B, don't bring it up. Do not alert the oppositions of your flaws. And yeah, the whole point of pitch is like exaggerating your success, or if you're actually that successful, showcasing your success. Now, you do want to prepare for counter arguments, because even if you're not addressing it in your pitch, it will be helpful in a Q&A. And yeah, I have that right there. And if you answer like a question that was made to kind of like dig holes in your product, and you answer it with a fire solution, that's infinite aura. Like, I can't lie, I don't think like that's the best thing to happen, because then it not only shows the investor that okay, you've thought this through, it also shows that you're like ready for this. And yeah, it shows you you're him. Like, simply. Anyway, that's the end of my speech. Thank you so much for joining in today. Does anyone have any questions? And I should also mention that if anyone wants like free food, like I'll buy someone free food right now. So I guess just comment in the chat if you want some grub, and then I got you. So I guess like the first person to type in chat can get some free grub. That's a question. Grub? Yeah, just food. Like, I don't know where you're from, but if you have like Uber Eats or like something like that, I'll just give you a gift card and you can buy food. Because the best part about hackathons, in my opinion, is the food. And since this is a virtual hackathon, we're kind of missing out on that. And also, why is this light so harsh? Has my head been my head been that red the whole time? Alright, it's whatever. Can't say no. Alright, bet. Praise Ola Tide. DM me on Discord at TCYT7, and then yeah, I'll just give you some free food. Alright, RTX 4090 asks, how old do you think you should be to start a startup? Now, I'm slightly biased to this. I was like interested in the business world since like 13. I don't think there's really a correct age you have to be to create a startup. As long as you know what you're doing. Like, I've seen too many kids on LinkedIn who have a startup for the dumbest thing ever. It's like a problem nobody has, and they're just not going to be successful. Like, I'll be upfront with them, and like, you can't tell that to them because they're too young to understand, you know? And actually, I don't like that term. They're not too young to understand, but let them learn that lesson by themselves. So the one-liner answer to your question is, there's not a minimum age to create a startup, but know what you're doing. Alright, anyone else have any other questions? Alright, bye Boston Celtics 2025. Alright, well yeah, I don't think anyone has any other questions, so thank you so much for attending my workshop, and I'll see y'all later.